What is up, YouTube and X? I have Jay from CHGO Podcast. It is a very, very great show. It's one of the best shows that I watch for Blackhawks content. So thank you so much for being on, Jay.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Anthony. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I don't want to waste anyone's time here. Can we talk about the number three overall pick and who you would select if you were the head of the table?
Well, if Michael Misa's there, that's the pick, right? But that remains to be seen whether or not the Islanders are going to take him. And if they don't, um, maybe the hope is they take Higgins and the Sharks take Schaefer, and then Misa's there for the Hawks. But that seems kind of unlikely. I would say, let me say this first. Of any of the names we've heard, Frondell, Desnoyers, Martone, Higgins, who none of those will really upset me. I feel like I'd probably be the most excited about Martone just because he brings something they don't have. He's got that great shot. Yeah, the skating can use some work, but guess what? Like skaters can get better. We just saw Ryan Donato do it before last season, and all of a sudden now he's got 16 million new dollars that he maybe wasn't counting on, right? So those sort of things can be worked on and improved, especially with a pro, an NHL coaching staff and development staff and conditioning staff working on it. That would be the most exciting to me. But again, I none of those would really outrage me, especially considering how there's not a lot of separation. I mean, even between Misa and the other forwards, that seems to be like a decently sized gap, but it's not necessarily a no-brainer that he's going first. So number one, like the dream pick is Misa. From there, I guess I would prefer Martone or Higgins, but if it's the other one of the other two guys, that's fine too. I
Yeah,
know
I think
it's
we're
a boring
hearing.
answer.
No, it's a great answer. I have the exact same. I got to speak to every single prospect, but mainly I've talked to Martone and Higgins throughout the season more. And I talked to Chris Peters about his skating, and he said 4 years ago Martone was a lot worse skater. He actually had to develop that, and where he is now is incredible. I compare him to an old-timey car. Gets takes a little bit to get off the line, but he can get you to point A to point B. It's the first three strides, but he can work on that if he goes to the college game. Obviously, Anton Frondell looks like the pick um, at this point, but obviously there's nothing set in stone. What do you think Anton Frondell could give the Blackhawks? And as well as, do you see him playing on the top line with Connor Bedard or centering Frank Nazar's line?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say because we all see kind of the same highlights. You go watch the shift by shifts on YouTube or the prospect breakdowns from everybody. It feels like Frondell is a really safe pick. You're going to get a really good player. What the offensive ceiling is, we don't really know. But he's got that ability to play two ways. Probably will have some as these other prospects arise and other guys, maybe they're better than you thought. Maybe they're top six and you didn't have that on your bingo card, right? Frondell's a guy who can kind of move up and down the lineup, and maybe when they're really ready to win, Frondell's your third line center, but he's one of the best in the league. Kind of like, no, I'm not saying he's a Dave Bolin type player, but Dave Bolin, when the Hawks were winning cups, was the best third line center in the league. And then Marcus Kruger was the best fourth line center in the league. So it's a nice problem to have. I think just the versatility he brings and the style would be a decent contrast to Connor Bedard. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see where David is at because I would say if the prospect group wasn't so or the forward group wasn't so small already,
Mhm.
wouldn't it feel like James Higgins is like an
Yeah.
ideal
Mhm.
like an ideal Kyle Davidson pick?
Yeah.
But now I'm wondering if he's just like, well, we are kind of trending small, so let's take the I know Frondell isn't huge, but let's take a more typically sized forward and see what we can do with him. So, again, like I said, safe pick, high floor. It's just what remains of the ceiling, right? Like what is the ceiling going to look like for him?
Haggins is basically like the all-star version of every single player we've drafted recently, and incredible
Yeah.
skater, playmaker. And that's the one time we don't take him. But obviously, we don't know anything yet. And shout out Dave Bolin, who was just on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast. You guys did a fantastic job on that. Getting two Stanley Cup champion back to back was really cool to watch. But and I'll later ask you about someone that you've been shell shocked over. But just to go back to your point, do you think that there's somebody at like the Blackhawks are more interested in of the Desnoyers, Frondell, Martone, or Haggins that you've heard that actually kind of makes you excited about this? Because I know last year it was Demidov, Levshunov, and then there was that big rift, but this year it's kind of different. It could be your cup of tea. So is there somebody that you've heard as like is the pick in your opinion?
I don't have, look, I think the most plugged in guy to this sort of stuff is Scott Powers. And he is saying Daniel or Frondell. So that's where my head's at. That is how I'm going to operate until I need to operate otherwise. So I don't have any inside scoop on where they're picking. I think Kyle Davidson has clearly demonstrated through his time as GM that he does not let a lot out. What the Blackhawks are thinking and what the Blackhawks are working on is not usually public. You might get a drip here or there from Powers or from Frank Saravalli or whoever. It used to be Emily Kaplan. Her source must have left the organization. Um, but uh, but I think it's going to be one of those two. And I will convince myself to be excited once that's the pick, right? Because then you start digging in, you start talking to coaches and teammates, and really getting the scouting reports done. Of those two, I think Desnoyers is really exciting. I mean, you hear a lot like it. He sounds like Jonathan Taves-ish.
Yeah,
Like
that
the
was a scout.
leadership, the two-way play, like a big scoring output in Moncton, right? Like 84 points in 56 games. You can't really ignore that. But Frondell has had the opportunity in Sweden to play against older players. So it's not just him against a bunch of kids. It's him against, and look, they're not NHL caliber older players, but they're in their full adult bodies. They finish checks. Those sort of things are interesting to see how a prospect handles it. So again, for me, it's a coin flip between those two. If you're asking me to choose one right now, I think Desnoyers seems a little more exciting just because I get Taves vibes and I love Jonathan Taves.
Yes, Ben Pope obviously asked Dave Norier who his player comp was, and it was Jonathan Tays, as well as Scott Powers came on 2 days ago and to my show, and he actually poured cold water on the Frondell front. He said that there could possibly be a Martone in the mix, and the Blackhawks are going to meet early next week. So I think that obviously there's nothing set in stone yet. So that was a great answer, Jay. And it was very honest. I know that Caleb Desnoyers had two bummed wrists playing since November, which was the source. And actually, he re-aggravated it probably in game 3 of the Mem Cup. And he played fantastic. And he also didn't, he had a 62% face-off percentage, as well as he was playing wing majority of the year, even though he's a true center. So that's also something. He was hurt a very long time. So
Yeah.
Desnoyers, even yeah, he destroyed the queue. But so I want to talk to you about, the 25th pick. Obviously, Vaslav Nestrasil is kind of the Blackhawks Twitter favorite pick. His camp said that they reached out to me and they told me that the Blackhawks met with him for dinner like a month ago, and then they met him early at the combine, and there's serious interest there. Do you think that the Blackhawks will probably choose a bigger forward at that 25th pick, or are you hearing a different name,
I,
in
you
your
know,
opinion?
yeah, I think everything's really on the table at 25 if they even make that pick. All the rumors lately has been that they're going to be pretty active on the trade market. Again, depending on who you read, Frank Saravalli said, keep your eye on the Blackhawks over the next 10 days. And meanwhile, Scott Powers wrote today, like, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
It might be a boring offseason. So I
Yep.
don't know. We'll see. I would be surprised if the 25th pick is there, for two reasons. I think that as we talked about with James Hagan's, Cullen Potter, who is 20th in the consolidated rankings out of Arizona State, might be the kind of guy that Kyle Davidson wants to get and wants to develop and throw him into that pile of really speedy, obviously not ideally sized forwards. And also, if there's a trade down, like if the third pick is in play and they're thinking about trading down, let's say somebody like Buffalo or something, I think everyone is going to be very intrigued with Brady Martin from Sioux. It feels like right now, like probably 2 weeks ago, he was in the middle 10, right? Like somewhere between 10 and 20. Now it almost feels inevitable that he's going to go into top 10 because what happens in every sport is when a team shows success with a certain style, as the Panthers have done, everyone's going to try to come and duplicate what the Panthers are doing. And Brady Martin is a guy who, if you like, he feels like a Florida Panther, doesn't he? Like that's kind of the idea. But that's the kind of guy. Let's say the Hawks do go Hagens, right? And they don't go Martone. Um, if they could trade up, maybe you trade that Florida pick next year and the 25th pick to move up in the top 10 to get Brady Martin. There's a lot of ways this can go. I don't have any insight on where, how they're leaning aside from the stuff that we all know. But we know the sort of attributes that Kyle Davidson looks for. I think that's how we kind of inform ourselves. So when I see somebody like Cullen Potter on the board, it's like that's like that is exactly a Kyle Davidson draft pick. So that's what I'd keep an eye on. But I am just salivating over Brady Martin, man. Like that would be if somehow he could pull off getting 3 and moving up to draft Potter, that would be incredible. I don't know how you can do it without maybe giving up next year's first, which of course you don't want to do because
McKenna's
you want Gavin McKenna, you want at least a shot. But I just hope there's action, man. That's what I'm hoping for this offseason. Give me something. Give me someone new. It's just you get kind of the same old stuff, and I think the players feel that way too. Like get some new life, get some new blood. I know there will be with young guys, but let's get active in the trade market here.
I mean, we got Shea Weber, so that was awesome.
It's true.
No,
Not every day you get a Hall of Famer at the trade deadline.
100%, and 8 million cap. So Cullen Potter, when I saw him at the combine, he's a lot bigger. The NCAA kids are a lot more physically mature than actually I would have thought. Like his arms are huge and he can add a lot more muscle. With Brady Martin, he's actually the favorite now to go to Utah at 4, which is really interesting to me. The betting favorite and everything I heard at the combine. And I should not have heard anything. I mean, I was just sitting next to Chris Peters, Scott Wheeler, and all those guys just because I was like, hey, I mean, this is the table to be at. But everybody was talking about Brady Martin and either Pittsburgh coming up if they have 11 and 12 because of the Sioux with 2013 Dubas, or if Utah picks him at 4, which obviously they might have fallen in love with him when they were slotted at 10 to 14. So obviously you and the Utah GM both love Brady Martin. And his player comp, to your point, for Panthers players was Sam Bennett, which was great marketing at the combine, basically, because he just won Conn Smythe. So
yeah, but could he do a pull-up? Could he do a pull-up? Yeah. That's the question. Because if you can't do a pull-up, you clearly can't play in the NHL.
That's hilarious. I mean, what did McDavid do? 1 bench press?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, something like that.
He's still faster than God. He'll be okay.
Hey, that's why I only do 2 push-ups a night, because I don't want to scare Cam Schmidt. I mean,
yeah, you don't want to overdo it,
I want to save some of us, some of the muscle for all the prospects out there. I told Chris Peters I would have made the NHL, but I sprained my pinky in 4th grade, so it stopped my development. Which really did happen. No, but I will say, okay, Ryan Donato just signed the Brian Bickle contract in 2013, 4x16, which I always think is funny because, I mean, that contract was loaded even back then. But 12 years later, Ryan Donato gets it, and he had 30 goals this season. How incredible was that contract, and what were you doing when you saw it pop up? Because majority of Blackhawks fans didn't think he was going to re-sign after we didn't trade him.
Well, I was driving home from yesterday's CHGO show, and Mario called me. I was actually on another phone call. And Mario called me, and I'm like, "Oh, something happened," because he would never just call me out of the blue. So I'm like, all right, got to wrap up this phone call. Jumped on our work Slack and saw that it happened. So literally, we hosted a birthday party for our friend at our house last night that was starting at 5, and I'm like, I got to go downstairs and do a podcast. So the first 15 minutes was me in my basement and everybody upstairs. So that's how I found out. That's what we did, and. Look, we've been, like you kind of mentioned how good of a deal it is. We've been speculating over, since the trade deadline, really, when he didn't get traded, what his next deal could look like. Then we heard there was a 3-year, $12 million deal offer out there, but then that wasn't taken for like a month. So we were saying, like, does he want more money? Is he want more term? So he took more term. And that's what he had said all along. Like every time he was asked about his contract status, he said, I got a young family. I just want some stability. So we got it in a 4-year deal. And so the Hawks, maybe Donato sacrifices a little bit of salary for the opportunity to have a 4th year on the contract. And I think both sides are thrilled with that. Mm-hmm. As I said on the show yesterday, like even if the production drops off, even if he goes from 31 and 31 to 20 and 20, right? Which is fine. A 40-point guy for $4 million that can play center wing on all 4 lines, plays in the power play, can be on the penalty kill, doesn't do it a ton, but can do it if you need him to. Never complains, never pouts. And I think, too, you saw, as we mentioned early in the show, when we were talking about Martone, Donato is challenged at the end of 2023-24 to say, hey, You got to get faster. Like you've got to work on your skating. Says right on. Focuses his entire offseason on it and is rewarded with a monster season. That like we have to remember that at some point, all these guys were the best players on their team. And all of them, as Dave Bolin told us to, name drop, on Tuesday, he was, what do you have, 140 points or something his last year in junior? Like he put up monstrous numbers, but he gets to the NHL and realizes, okay, if I'm going to succeed here, I'm not going to be a 100-point guy. I've got to find my way to succeed in the NHL. And Ryan Donato now says, I need to take my game to another level. I'm going to learn how to skate. I'm going to become a better skater, add a step or two. It makes a huge difference. So when you look at these guys who look like Connor Bedard's on a different stratosphere, right? Nazar, Ver, LSE, Vanacker, like when these guys start to come up, Colton Dock, and they've had success at every level, and then they get to the NHL and they're like, man, it's just not, for whatever reason, it's not clicking with me. They can look to a guy like Donato, who had a well-established NHL career before last season. Somebody flat out said, if you want to be more effective, you have to get faster. And he did it and it worked. Like, I think that example, that no matter where you are in your career, there's always a step you can take, is going to be so huge to a young team that is full of high first round picks that are used to dominating and working through those struggles of, oh man, I'm not that guy at this level. How do I get to be an effective guy that plays every day and makes a lot of money in this league? They can look at guys like Donato to get that answer.
That's an absolutely incredible answer. I mean, when I asked that question, I did not think it was going to go that in depth. I absolutely love that. Obviously, you are as smart as Donato. Donato went to Harvard, second round pick from the Boston Bruins. He
Yes.
obviously knew
I went
he
to
had
I went to the Harvard of Romeoville, Lewis University.
same thing. I mean,
Yeah,
they're
exactly. Same
both Ivy
colors.
League. Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Seriously, I I'm shocked. Like that's I mean, honestly, the fact that I didn't actually know that in 2023 he worked on his skating the entire offseason, that makes a complete difference. And you showed with the game that he played this year. Um, let's go back to the coaching staff because Andre Sorensen is still on the staff, and I feel like that's really good for the Rockford players that had come up. And we have now assistant coaches Mike Vellucci, Michael Pecco with Jeff Blashill. And I know CHGO got to go interview Jeff Blashill right after he was hired, so definitely go check that out. I'll link that in the description. But can you talk to me about Jeff Blashill and Andre Sorensen and what you think they can do now in their new roles for the prospects coming up and already on the roster?
Well, so what I like about Blashill is his message is simple and consistent. There will be a level of expectation for every player on the roster, and it's you're not gonna skate by. You're not. He called it the poke and hope. You're not gonna go like try to poke at a puck for a 50-50 chance and maybe you get a breakaway in the risks of a guy going the other way and scoring. Like they're not gonna play that way. It's defensively responsible in all zones. It is control the puck. It is protect the puck. It is when you don't have the puck, get the puck back as quickly as possible. And there will be an expectation. One thing he said to us that stood out to me, he said, playing on the power play is a privilege. Playing 6-on-5 is a privilege. And playing 5-on-6 is a privilege. Like having that opportunity for the empty net. And all these sort of opportunities have to be earned. And I asked him, like, what does accountability look like for you? Like, how does that, when you are deciding whether or not to discipline a player, is it zero tolerance? You were coached not to do this. You didn't do it. You're benched for a period or you don't play the next game. Or is it more of like okay, that just happened. Now get out there and do it. And he said, what I really liked about his answer was you kind of have to do it different for every player. Every guy's different. So some guys will respond more to positive reinforcement. Like, hey, I know you can be better next time. Next time, you're not poking at that puck. You're really going to win that board battle and make sure it's safe. Go get him. Another guy, you got to say, hey, I don't know how many times I've had to tell you, you're not doing the poke and hope. Not you're sitting for the rest of this period or you're missing 2 shifts or whatever it might be. Like, I know that sounds like different rules for different players, but I think Blashill really has an understanding of it takes different techniques with different players. And that's in this era of sports, it's, that's so essential. And just like I'm as smart as Ryan Donato for going to Harvard, coach 18U softball, so I am as qualified as Jeff Blashill, but I
Yeah.
understand, like, I've coached girls from age 6 now up to 18, and every girl's different. You have to have a different approach with all of them. Some need like visual. How do I swing? Well, keep your weight back. What does that mean? Here's a picture, right? That sort of stuff. Or we had one girl, she kind of bobbled a ball. We're like, that's okay, get him next time. She's like, no, tell me that was bad and tell me I need to be better. We're like, okay, that sucked. Pick up the ball next time and throw it to first. Let's go. Like, everybody needs a different kind of of
Yeah.
a kick, and I think Blashill's got a feel for that. As for the assistants, Sorensen, we knew he was going to be in the organization. Kyle Davidson said so. I don't mind him in that role. I think he's a really smart hockey guy. He's very respected. We learned that Sorensen and Blashill had a relationship before, not like a, a relationship, but they had a friendship before Blashill took the job in Chicago. They met at several coaching clinics, those sort of things. So they do have a history. So yeah, I'm sure the Hawks like suggested he keeps Sorensen, or said, "Hey, this guy's here. How do you feel?" And he said, "Yeah, cool. I like him. I know him. I know he's a smart hockey guy. He does have a good reputation." And of course, you've got the continuity with the guys coming up from Rockford to Chicago. They've got that shoulder to lean on. And again, going back to our interview with Dave Bowen on Tuesday, he talked about Mike Haviland. When Mike Haviland joined the Blackhawks coaching staff, he had been in Rockford with all the like Bolin, Buff, all the bees, Brower, like all those guys. So it was an easy, familiar face. Because as I'm talking about, is these players have different personalities. They've got to have someone that some guys need a shoulder to lean on. And maybe Sorensen is that guy for, hey, Blashill's riding my ass. Like, and Sorensen can crack one of his sarcastic jokes, go over some film, and everybody feels better, right? That stuff is essential. I think too often we think of hockey as like an NHL video game, like just plug and play.
Yeah.
The emotions matter, the personalities matter, and I think Sorensen is a really good. Not that Blashill is a bad cop, but he's a little more firm. He's a little more loud. So to have somebody like Sorensen to talk to is huge. And then I really liked Vellucci, obviously, a super long record of coaching. So that's great experience. You could check that box, not worry about that. And Michael Pekka, as you talk about having smallish forwards that you want to teach to play the 200-foot game, that is Michael Pekka to a T. That is exactly what he was as a player. And when we talked to Scott Gomez Tuesday, it was kind of funny. Some of his Chicago Steel players, he said, were asking him who his favorite, like, best player he played with, and he said Alexander Mogilny, and none of them have heard of Alexander Mogilny. So I don't know if these kids know who Michael Pekka is, but they should find out, because again, you could see Frank Nazar becoming a Michael Pekka or Scott Gomez kind of player. But they need to be coached to do so. And I think having Pekka around, who made the most out of his limited size, it is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I was talking to Coach Petey that has been on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast time and time again with CHGO Phoenix as well. I mean, he raved about Michael Pekka. I feel like everybody that's watched him, even live and seen all of his years, I think it was over 12 years, just how he played. I mean, it's the right way to play. That's a playoff player. So
That's what Blashill calls winning hockey.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that Sorensen can, break those jokes if Blashill's riding someone's ass, theoretically in hockey. But like, I feel that if Jeff Blashill is the right guy for this, I really did want David Carl, but after seeing everything about Jeff Blashill, I'm very excited and stoked for a Blackhawks fan. And something I asked Ben Pope, Mario, and Scott Powers, do you think Connor Bedard wins the Stanley Cup with the Blackhawks? And I just want your answer for that. And when do you think you can see us in contention next?
Well, that's a tough question, because you could be a really, really, really good team and never win a Stanley Cup. Ask Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
For fun, I will say yes. But so I think I will say yes with an asterisk of, I think Connor Bedard will have the opportunity to win a Stanley Cup as a Blackhawk. I believe they will have a cup quality level team at some point that he will be on, that can compete significantly for a Stanley Cup. Whether or not they actually win it, we don't know. But I think I would say in 4 or 5 years, you can start talking about them as contenders if things go the way they have gone in terms of the development so far, right? Like almost everybody that you envision as an NHL player in the organization is pointed up arrow wise. No one had like a season of concern that you're really like, this is a guy we're kind of counting on to be an NHL player. All of them have ascended and pretty consistent.
And can I get your off-season wish list?
Yes. Are we doing fantasy or reality?
A little bit of both. Just I guess tier
Uh,
fantasy and then
all right, so
realistic.
we'll do like it could happen is where I'll start. Unlikely, but it could. Getting Jason Robertson from Dallas would be, I mean, that is a perfect fit. That is a perfect fit. 26 years old when the season begins. Uh, Big score, power forward style. Has played on a winner. His best game is probably still ahead of him. I think he'd have a little more because Dallas is so good. I think he'll get even more of an opportunity here to really be that 1A or 1B with Bedard and, power play one, first line, on the ice all the time. That would be the dream. I think to a lesser extent, like maybe a notch down would be JJ Peterka. 23 good numbers. I know Buffalo has like Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, they've got some good players, but I always, for old time Hawks fans that are listening, I always think back to Kyle Calder when he was on the Hawks, and he had good productive seasons because someone had the score. Like the team was so bad, they're not going to get shut out every night. Goals are going to happen at some point, so someone has to be there. I wonder how much of that you could say about Paterka. That's why I think he's very much legit, and I think he is the player he is. But that's why I don't have the same buzz for him as I would have for Robertson. Like I think Robertson's a different tier. Um, Aside from that, you look at somebody like Maverick Bork, you look at somebody like Mason Marchment. Like it's hard. Like we're at a weird point right now that it's kind of unprecedented where the teams that are rebuilding are ascending. The teams that are competing are suddenly getting this kick of cap space that we weren't expecting 4 or 5 years ago, right? Um, and then there's teams that probably should rebuild, but probably won't, like Boston. Nashville just trades for Eric Halle yesterday. Okay, that's going to fix things. Um, Pittsburgh,
Penguins.
right? Like, are they going to move on from Crosby and Letang and Eric and Carlson? I almost said Erickson. Carlson, like, are they gonna? I don't know. Should they? Yes, but like, I think for Hawks fans that are frustrated that like Kane and Taves and all those guys got shipped off, the alternative is the Penguins, who are holding. Now you'll get a boatload for Sidney Crosby if you trade him. Make no mistake, but you're holding on to these guys too long. They're losing value as they age. You're going to get little or nothing for them in return. Meanwhile, they got a decent draft spot this year, but like years prior, they've been right in the middle. They're the Bulls of the NHL, right? Like you're never going to get out of that hole unless you fully do it. Kyle Davidson recognized that. Whether it works or not remains to be seen. But I think once Crosby and Malkin and Letang and Carlson are gone, like that's going to be a rough go unless they
Yeah.
knock the draft out of the park.
And they said 2026 they're or after this season, it's probably Malkin's last year there too. So, and they might not even get anything for him or maybe trade deadline, but
Yeah, I mean, and
obviously
like they're
it's
picking
too late.
11th this year, so
Yeah,
like
and maybe
they'll
12.
yeah, and they'll probably get a decent player there. But is it a franchise changer? No, no.
Completely agree. Maybe if the Rangers give them the pick, I mean, it's 48 hours before the draft, but maybe they could trade up for Brady Martin with that Sue, like we said with Dubas in there in 2013. But we only have a couple minutes left. You've been so gracious with your time. Can you give me some of your passions and the way you kind of got started in a very condensed little bit?
Yeah, no, it's all right. I got a few more minutes. It's cool. My passions, more than hockey, are music. I love music. I'm a huge Grateful Dead fan. Um, I've always liked them, and then over the last couple of years, I've really taken like that fandom to a new level, where it's like kind of all I listen to, and I'm somewhat concerned, but it's okay. I'm also a gamer. I play I have an Xbox and I just got the Switch too. Really
Nice.
compulsive stupid thing to do, but whatever. So I got that. So I love the sports games. I do like Call of Duty. And then all the Mario games are super fun. And then I love coaching softball. My daughter is a high school softball pitcher, but I've always coached her in rec. She doesn't love that I coach her every year, but it is what it is. So just love being on the field with, and it's cool. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been with this group of girls since they were 6, and now they're 18 and younger. My daughter's 15, but it's 18U. So just kind of getting to know them and see them grow in from like literal toddlers to like really solid softball players is very, very cool. So I love that. Spend a lot of time with I kind of a homebody. I like hanging out with my wife and daughter. We kind of, when we've got time, go on like little road trips and stuff. But that's it, man. Pretty simple. In terms
We're
of how I
very.
got started,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, no problem. So I have been a Hawks fan since I think I really became like a diehard Hawks fan in like 95, 96. Honestly, prompted by I went to the All-Star game at the stadium with the super famous anthem that everyone has seen a million times. And, you know, went to like a game or two a year, and then the hooks got in. Then the NHL 94 games came out. That really
Mm.
helped me learn like the rest of the league and kind of understand the rules. And then from there, got some of my own expendable income. Went to almost every game because it was $8 on a student ID. And the Hawks, I had kept my college ID until I was like 30, and they just just kept letting me do it, which was great.
That's
So went
awesome.
to a ton of games, and then when the Hawks got good at the score, I went to Lewis University, as I mentioned, studied broadcast journalism and radio TV broadcasting. Um, my goal was to get a job at the score, 670 the score. That's what I wanted to do with my career. I did it, got an internship. Actually did 2 internships there, was hired right away. So I had a job there before I graduated. And I was there for 23 years. Took a 6 month promotion to WBBM, and then CHGO called and I went there. So the Hawks thing, though, when the Hawks got good in the 2010s, the score had to kind of scramble because they didn't have anyone who really followed the team, and they knew I did. And so the first time I had my radio show in college, and then the next time I hosted a radio show was a 2008 playoff game, post game, Hawks and Flames. So I had not been on the air for 7 years, and I'm making my debut on the score. And I had meticulous notes, all my thoughts. And as soon as that light turned on, I just completely freaked out. And Jason Goff, now at CHSN and Spotify, was a producer at the time, friend of mine, and he heard me struggling on the air, and he just like called me and talked me through it. He's like, "So what'd you see?" He kind of started interviewing me, and I started talking about it, and for whatever reason, like that was the switch. I just needed like someone to direct my thoughts, and he picked me up. I'll never forget that. It's like I get goosebumps thinking about it because if he hadn't called, I probably would have just ran out of there, and none of this would have happened. But it just got my mind centered, and from then on, playoff post game shows on the score. Started doing remote interviews with Hawks players. So Ladd, Boland, I did a ton with Boland, like probably 50 or something. Uh, Stieg did a couple. Antti Ranta did a couple. Ryan Garbutt did a couple. It's like, oh, Andrew Desjardins did a few.
Mhm.
So it was cool. It was a way for me to like get in with the players and talk to them. And then when CHGO came along, that's the first time I was like credentialed media, going to events, going to games, going to the draft, and that's taken it to a new level. So basically, what was a hobby that I started in 2017 is the Madhouse podcast with James Naveau grew into CHGO Blackhawks in a career. So I never dreamed that this was like I always say this. I can't call it my dream job because I never dreamed this job existed. Um,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
before this, I wanted to be Charlie Romeliotis, the WGN pre and post game
Hmm.
host. That was like kind of like I would love that. That would be my favorite job ever. This is so much better. Sorry, Charlie, but it is.
I mean, it sounds like absolute fate. I'm so glad that uh, Goff called you during that, and I mean, I'm so glad that it worked out because I love watching your content. I love watching you at CHGO. I think that you bring a new light to it as well. Shout out to Charlie Roumeliotis, who's coming on after the draft to do a draft recap on the show. But I mean, the Blackhawks, the people that are in and the insiders and the sources and like you guys like it very open and the community is so great, so I'm just glad to be here and get to talk to you. It was a pleasure having you on, and I hope you the best during this busy season too, and I hope that um your team that you coach for softball just keeps winning records, and then they
Yeah,
they can
sure.
play the White Sox one day, and they'll beat them because anyone could beat the White Sox in my honest opinion. Shout out. No, but thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to link everything in the description. This is like a Hot Ones video, so the camera here, here, and here. You can tell everybody what you're doing next and where they can find you.
Awesome. Before I do, I want to point out to you, man. You asked me like how I got started. I am seeing like your ambition and your desire to make this a thing for yourself, and you're fearless in asking for interviews. You're doing the work. Your boots on the ground at the combine. Like you said, I don't belong there. Yeah, you do. You're putting the work in. You want to be there. You're trying to make this a career for yourself. So we all in the Hawks Twitterverse, whatever you want to call it, we see you doing that, and it's good job, man. Keep doing that. You get,
I really
yeah. I mean,
appreciate that.
that's what you got. I mean, It's just like being an athlete. You've got to put the work in, and you're killing it. You're doing a great job. So, Twitter at Zawaski. My Instagram's private because I got a kid. You know how it is. But you can try. Where else? CHGO Blackhawks podcast 5 days a week. And we're on. We also do the audio feed. It's not just the video, but we're live every weekday at 2. And then during the season, pregame on the road, postgame for everything, and then however many other studio shows we need to make 5. And the MFAT podcast too. Let's check out the MFAT podcast where me and my partner Rick talk about food and being fat and all that fun stuff.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your kind words. It almost made me tear up a little bit, but honestly, I'm gonna link all of that in the description, especially the I'm Fat podcast, because me and Mario talked about it a ton because he's jealous that he can't eat some of the foods. But thank you
Yeah.
so much. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.
All right.